Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming out. We're going to get started. Alright, so before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to thank this space, this Digital Garage 717. We come here quite often. They're an excellent partner. I see the helpers around you. A round of applause. It's an amazing space. Thank you so much. And in that exact sort of same thread, I also want to thank our sponsors who made the pizza and beer, and for the live streamers, the camera that we're using possible. So we have Waxman PR. They're a really great PR firm out of New York. They represent a lot of the larger Bitcoin companies you actually might be familiar with. And it's one of the Waxman PR people here. Derek, are you in the room? Oh, he's up front watching the door for me. So obviously big thanks to them. In addition, CoinSource, they do Bitcoin ATMs. They have a couple in San Francisco itself and all around the world, doing a big push in Asia right now. A really great way to kind of get some Bitcoin if you don't have any. Raise your hand if you don't have any Bitcoin. Okay. That's a good result, I think. All right. And then lastly, of course, Dash. Dash has been a longtime partner of ours. They really believe in helping the blockchain ecosystem in general, regardless of project. I'm personally a very big fan of that philosophy, and they've been a big help for us as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First up today, we're going to do lightning talks. So if you're not familiar with this, essentially, we got 5 people over here. They're going to take 1 minute to talk about their project, and then we'll move on to the next person. So big round of applause for our speakers, and all their institutions. First up, guys, we're talking about Bayern.
Thank you, Travis. My name is Daya. I'm the founder of Vive. Vive is a blockchain payment system. It's very different to anything that's out there. What I've built is basically disrupting interchange, and that's the rails that Visa and MasterCard run on. Once you disrupt that, you disrupt the entire banking system, and that's essentially what Bitcoin is supposed to do, because the entire banking system runs on top of interchange, which is the Visa, MasterCard rails, at least in the payment space. A company like Citibank, for example, 40% of its market cap comes from credit card fees, late fees. So once you disrupt that, and it's going to take a few years, boom, the whole thing's going to collapse. So if you're interested in learning about Vive and what we're doing something very exciting, come see me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we're here at Coin1.
Hi guys, my name is Steve from Coin1. I'm CSO of Coin1, and we recently opened up the office in Palo Alto. So we are actually one of the biggest exchanges in Korea, and now we are in the States. The reason I'm here, we're going to do 3 things. First thing, we want to build up the remittance between Korea and US corridor, and also we want to do some cross-country arbitrage trading. And lastly, we are looking for ICO projects. So I want to personally meet the ICO projects, and we will do the thorough research, and hopefully we will list them in near future. So, I mean, recently, about 2 months ago, we listed Quantum, which is China's biggest project, and we are right now doing 80% of their volume in our exchange. So, if you have any question about our office in Palo Alto or anything about Korea, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Asking to talk to ICOs, you're going to get swamped after. Next up, Bitflyer.
Hi, I'm John from Bitflyer. We are a Japanese Bitcoin exchange that is expanding to the US. We have approval to operate in 34 states, including California. We are a new Bitcoin exchange, and if you're looking for a new Bitcoin exchange, we will be public by the end of the year. If you're interested in signing up for our waitlist, you can sign up on bitflyer.com/ENUS.
Thank you. And of course,
Hello everyone, I'm Jason from Alphabet Digital Currency Fund. We're one of the world's first regulated digital currency fund in the world. Just give me a shout if you have any projects, ICOs, or obviously exchanges. I think we'll have some interesting talks. And anyone who's interested in, so one of the investment philosophies that we have is we use Bitcoin as our benchmark. So we do have to, we aim to beat the performance of Bitcoin with a lower volatility risk. So in other words, we provide investors with a better return than you just buying and holding Bitcoins. And so far, we're about 350% of the performance of Bitcoin this year. So if anyone's interested, please hit me up afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you. Astra.
Hello everyone, my name is Rajesh Trivedi. I'm with Astra, the social supercomputer. At Astra, we are transforming a large number of passive volunteer communities into vibrant economic communities. So one of the first activities they'll be doing is, sharing the computing resources, computer storage and networking for medical research, scientific research, and for verifying information to build repository of social truth. In return, there are points basically. So the idea of Astra is to build transform social communities into economic communities. And right now we're in a pre-sale. You can check it out at www.astralytics.com. Thanks again.
Thank you. So Bodhi is actually one of our speakers today. Glad he introduced his project as well. This is great.
Hi everyone. My name is Sahong. I'm the founder of Bodhi Prediction Market. So what's Bodhi? Bodhi is the next generation decentralized prediction market built on top of quantum. So why we built this product? For three major reasons. One is we try to build this prediction market in China, which is one of the largest emerging markets in this world. Second thing is we are building this on top of quantum. We believe this is going to be a very powerful and useful add-on for the whole quantum ecosystem. Second thing is we want to learn more and learn a lot from the good parts of those existing prediction markets and try to implement all those cool features on our platform. So our office is engineering office. It's based in San Francisco, in Westview Mall. So if you are interested in our team, about the project we are building, feel free to contact with me or visit our website, bodhi.network. Thanks.
How's everybody doing? My name is Mosey.
My name is Neil Avelino.
And we're the co-founders of a mobile application named Carl.
Carl is a mobile application dedicated to car enthusiasts. We made this platform so car enthusiasts can meet each other faster. You can meet people who drive the same car as you and in the same location. And in turn, for car enthusiasts, allows us to find people to sell parts, and it's a place for a marketplace dedicated for us. We're in over 89 countries, and we have about 10,000 users. And this is how we're kind of in the crypto scene.
So now we're going to issue a token on Ethereum, ERC20 protocol, and it's going to be used for our users as a means of exchange, so they can exchange car parts and any other services. If you guys want to know more about us, go ahead and go on ico.carl.co. Our pre-sale is coming very soon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chandan. I'm with lotoken.org, lotoken.org. It's basically decentralized lottery, raffle, or any kind of contest. And basically we'll be providing the platform for people to organize these raffles. And we're looking to sort of attack the enterprise raffle market. Our pre-ICO is going on right now, and we have tackled some of the interesting problems related to random numbers on the blockchain to solve this problem. So do check it out, and would love your comments on that. Lowtoken.org. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the panel now. If our panelists can go ahead and come up, please round a big round of applause, and we're going to jump into the main event. All right, so we have two mics for you guys, so we'll let you share. Get my share set up here. They sure be on. And while I get this ready, why don't you go ahead and just go down the line and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you.
So, my name is Xiao Lin again, and that's it.
We already met you.
Hey guys, I'm Spencer Bogart with Blockchain Capital. Used to be at Meetup and write reports on GBTC and Bitcoin.
Terrence Yang, I'm at Yang Ventures as an angel, and I write a lot about crypto and so forth on Quora.
Hey guys, I'm Tim Swanson, previously director of marketing. Can't even tell my last job actually. I used to work at R3, and I've got a new company called Plosive Labs, where I try to cause as many problems for you Bitcoiners legally. I'm wearing a suit because I'm the token suit guy here. Any lawyers here, by the way? Any lawyers? Man, you guys have got some good billable hours after this.
We had a lawyer panel last month, and afterwards the lawyers were swamped. They were like rock stars, celebrities. I don't think that happens very often.
Yeah.
Well, let's just go ahead and start with an easy question. What happened, Terrence?
Wow. So, no one knows for sure, but rumor has it that, so basically the Chinese government thought that the market got overheated. There were a lot of ICOs in China with Chinese investors that were not very good, and not very good both in an absolute sense and relative to the US market. So stepped in, banned it. Then they also thought that because a lot of exchanges, just like, if you guys go back to how the SEC dealt with the DAO, and that was something that was a security. You cannot sell securities or offer to sell securities if you're an exchange. And that doesn't matter if you're in the US or in China. So in China, they saw these ICOs that were securities being offered by exchanges that were not securities exchanges. So China being China, they shut it down. Might be temporary, might not be. Arguably, unlike in past situations, there's no deadline or time frame for when they will unban the trading of ICO tokens on Chinese exchanges. So my belief is the exchanges in China, well, the good ones, and the big ones are pretty good, have really strong leaders, Bobby Lee of BTCC and so forth. They'll figure it out. They'll find a way, just like Jack Ma did, right, with Alibaba, find a way to work with the regulators and come up with regulations that protect Chinese investors, but also enable the exchanges to continue to operate, enable some of the better ICO tokens to be listed.
So let's go down the line and have everybody kind of feed him. Yeah, why don't we go to Tim first, and we'll just come back.
Sure, great. So you're probably wondering why some white guy in the Middle East is up here talking about China stuff. I actually used to work in China for 5 years, wrote a book about doing business in China, wrote a couple books on cryptocurrencies. I've got a pretty broad network out there. I used to mine Bitcoin actually 5 years ago myself. And no, I don't know anything. Please don't love me. So, I actually just wrote an article last week. Got a lot of love and a lot of hate also from some people related to ICOs in China and what's happening. So just to give you some numbers. Between January through June, we basically had about $400 million raised in about 65 ICOs. And what ended up happening is, to what Terrence was saying, when they talk about overheating, what really was taking place is you had a bunch of Ponzi MLM types come in with really shady backgrounds, taking advantage of at-risk people with fixed incomes, and using fraud and deceit to effectively raise money. It's happening here in the U.S. I'm sure there's people in this room who are here to try and snooker us out of money.
This is shocking news.
Yeah, welcome to the cryptocurrency world, right? Well, if you're not familiar with it, then yeah, welcome to the world. The way some of this stuff got caught, though, is the police and the various national regulators basically use WeChat intercepts to go through the history of these different chat rooms to find out who is doing what, who is cooking the books, who is behind some of these. And obviously we could talk about specific people. I won't right here, right now. But bottom line is almost all of that money that was raised has been disgorged and returned back to investors. Now there's some exceptions to that. Some who can't, some whose investors don't want the money back. But bottom line is, I could spend all day talking about all the crazy coins. I'll leave with one last note. There was an article from TechNode about 2 weeks ago, a woman named Linda Lin, who looked at 3 specific ICOs in China. They were absolutely ridiculous. It was like performance art on a blockchain. It was alpacas, or however you say that word. So yeah, if you're looking for scams to study, there's never ever overabundance in this space.
Spencer?
Yeah, so, unlike Tim, I have not lived in China, so I don't have great China qualifications, which is a little bit odd for me being on a China on a China panel. But, we do have one or a couple of investments based in China, and so it is in our interest to try and have some understanding of what's going on there. Certainly a lot of the crypto community is out of China, and so, naturally part of our network ends up being there. We don't have any more information than what you've seen in the public, so everything that I'll say today has just been kind of what we've heard through the rumor mill. So far over the past few weeks, the rumor mill has been pretty accurate. I didn't believe a lot of the things. I didn't believe, when the first ICO ban came out and we were hearing that Bitcoin was going to be banned next. Didn't believe it was going to happen. Did. Now we've been hearing that mining is going to be banned. I still am a little bit skeptical, but a little bit more inclined to believe it now.
We'll definitely get into mining, yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess the other question here is just kind of whether or not this is all about kind of consumer protection, and to what extent it might also be about capital controls, and trying to understand kind of what is the reasoning behind these things is, hopefully a helpful lens to understand what happens going forward.
So, yeah, to add on something about my personal opinions. So I think I personally have 2 viewpoints about what's going on in this area. First is about from the investor viewpoint. Some of you may know I started to invest in this area since 2011 on Bitcoin and later Ethereum and then now ICOs, right? So I almost witnessed almost every stage from the very beginning, especially from early this year. I think early this year, the whole China is still new to the whole ICO area. Why? Because I could feel at that time the whole blockchain ecosystem is still relatively small, and then most of people are Bitcoin maximalist, so they don't trust and they don't like Ethereum. However, as time goes, turns out Ethereum is a perfect platform to create new token. So then the wave is starting to getting so popular, and every day basically days by days you can feel something is more crazy, it's crazier. And then so I almost witnessed everything, from the very a small bubble and bigger and larger, and now suddenly it's bursted because of this regulation. That's one. I can talk more if you are interested later on. And second is I'm one of the founder of the Bodhi project. So we started to work on this project early this year, and our project given a startup which just founded a couple months, you're not supposed to become anything, right? However, surprisingly, our project right now it's one of the most popular project in China. Almost everyone in this area know what Bodhi it is in China. So we are so excited, and we are feel so lucky to be recognized as a very one of a promising project. I think we have big hope, and suddenly because of this, I think maybe if you are paying some attention in Chinese ICO markets. So we did a pre-ICO on August, middle August, and then we raised 10 million US dollar equivalent tokens in seconds. And right now we refund everything. So
that was your pre-sale.
Oh yeah, it's a pre-sale. And why we did that? Because like I said, we want to build this Chinese prediction market. So long-term wise, we don't want to break the relationship, and we don't want to cut a connection from China. So that's why we want to follow the rule, and then eventually we will figure out another way to work around.
So you guys did have a further follow-up ICO planned.
Yeah, so our official ICO is supposed to happen at September 25th, which is yesterday, right?
How's it going?
So we actually paused the plan and stopped everything, and we now focus on the product development and try to build the product first. Because given this time frame, I don't think it's a good time to still doing some ICO at this moment.
Okay, so we'll definitely go more into ICOs and mining. I did want at the top kind of get everybody's opinion on what they think this is going to do to the price. We have a lot of people here, they're investors as well, they are very interested in the price. So, another easy one, in the next 3 months, what do you think the price is going to be?
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin Cash?
Well, I am also a Bitcoin maximalist, so I never like sell like a tiny or small piece of Bitcoin at all. So and also I believe market will tell. A lot of people feel very negative about the regulation or the concern, but I would say like if you trust the future of Bitcoin, you should expect someday the regulation gonna come, because what Bitcoin is for is to decentralize everything, right? So it's just like a wall, right? It used to be ignored, and now it's like later on it's been loved, and now like the centralized like government or organization try to fight with you, and I think that's expected. So I personally feel very optimal or positive about the future. In about like 2 or 3 months. I personally don't know, but I wouldn't sell at all if anything.
I'm gonna need a number. I'll get ready. We'll see if Spencer has a number.
7,500. Okay. I honestly have no idea. Overall, I mean, the way that I think about this is like we're in super early innings. I mean, like 0.1% of people own Bitcoin. Awareness is much higher. We'll be releasing some numbers around this in the coming weeks. I mean, institutional ownership is fully 0%. As I talk to a lot of hedge fund managers and venture partners, the personal ownership is actually quite high, but they don't hold it in their funds at all because they haven't figured out how to do that yet. And for a lot of funds, it doesn't make sense. That trend is definitely changing. I mean, the awareness and the sentiment shift over the past year has really shocked me. I mean, even as somebody that's been mega bullish on Bitcoin, most people I used to talk to were entirely skeptical and were mostly just coming to kind of confirm their points about why they were skeptical. And now people are coming like, okay, this is definitely real, it's definitely happening, I just still don't quite understand it. So people coming in with a totally different approach. I mean, Coinbase signing up people at just, record rates. What happens when you go from 0.1% of people to 1%, right? I mean, that's a 10x increase in adoption. It has way more than 10x increase in price. I mean, the reason why I just don't like talking about these things too much is because I don't want people getting into it for the wrong reasons. I mean, I don't want to, there's a lot of risk involved in the space is the way to think about it. Any money that you put into it, you should be ready to lose. And if you're not ready to lose it, then just don't put it in.
Fair and cautious opinion. Terrence, number please.
7,000, because remember we have Bitcoin Gold, which is going to be an airdrop. We have the Segwit 2X in November that I believe will happen. I don't think China will come out with anything, any additional bans or regulations in the meantime. It's possible they do, but that part will cause some uncertainty, right? So I don't think they will ban mining, not to get ahead of ourselves. And then you can always have a country like Kazakhstan, which I don't know if you guys know. They've had 2 massive currency devaluations since 2008, when the financial crisis hit much of the world. And that drove people to Bitcoin. Some people.
I'd like to see that stat. So I'm not going to make any price predictions. I think that's fool's errand. No offense to all the fools here. So I think that if you're really trying to do your due diligence, just be intellectually honest. The only people coming into this space are speculators. Nobody's using these networks. We can see this on chain. So as long as you're intellectually honest and you're willing to believe that people are getting into this because they think other speculators are getting into it too. Yeah, maybe you could make some money, but to Spencer's point, also be prepared to lose it. I mean, if you just look at statistics, we only found out recently what Coinbase's actual usage number was. Not the vanity number that they show on the website, but actual people who use it. And that was because the IRS is suing them. We found out between the 3 years, 2013 to 2015, there was only 14,355 users that spent more than $20,000. That's it. So think that the cost per user, that's probably roughly the same as a bank or even more. Because most people simply just hold these and don't actually move them around, or maybe they move them off-chain, or off-site into another platform you can do an ICO. So I'm sure they probably don't want me saying that, but that's pretty much the usage right now, is buying coins and then sending them off to places to buy ICO. So I would say that if the speculators keep on coming in, yeah, prices go up, but not because actually anyone's using the network for its actual usage.
I agree with you that it's largely speculation. I will say that anecdotally, one of the people I talk with pretty regularly is a doctor down in Brazil who's converted his medical practice 1 day a week into helping other doctors move some small percentage of their wealth into Bitcoin because they're terrified of wealth confiscation. It's more profitable for him to operate his medical practice 1 day a week as a Bitcoin consultancy that literally just helps people buy Bitcoin and set up a wallet than it is to do it as a medical practice. I mean, that's anecdotal. I still think that I agree with him mostly that it's largely speculative, but there are some anecdotal cases.
I mean, that's an example of someone using Bitcoin. What do you think about in the Chinese market, what people are using Bitcoin for? And just a question for the panel.
Right now or in the future?
Like right now, what is the actual day-to-day use case of Bitcoin in China?
Honestly, there's no real use case, I'd say, other than exchange in the past or I think in the near future. Most of people still hold that as kind of like an investment. Like some of them hold that they believe this is good investment, and some of them try to speculate in this market. A lot of people doing trading or marginal trading, which is more crazier. So I think not just Bitcoin, almost all coins, if you look at that, including those working tokens, most of people just use it just because of that's a coin. They don't actually use it in the app or decentralized application behind. They just hold that. Hopefully, it will increase a lot. Yeah.
Terrence?
So if I had to guess, people in China are doing what Xiaoheng is saying, but some of them are also using it, a very small percentage for now, to deal with capital and currency controls, shall we say. And again, back to Spencer's point about wealth confiscation and currency devaluation. Right now, the Chinese economy is not doing great, and if they need to print money, then that will drive people towards things like gold, US dollars, but also maybe at the margin, Bitcoin, and I think that might continue increasingly so.
You gonna let me talk one more time? All right. So we know who succeeds.
2 whole times, that's it.
This is it. This is the last time. We know who succeeds in China or in any of these countries based on companies that don't go bankrupt. And if you look at VC-funded companies in the U.S., for example, the only companies that are still alive are those basically the exchanges or those who provide some kind of trading activity. The same for China. If you go through 2014 news releases of people who raise cash, the payment processors and these little wallets, stuff like that, they're all dead. There's a graveyard, not because they're horrible people or incompetent. No, some of them actually were. But by and large, it's the only activity that's actually been profitable for people doing trading and exchanges. And I'm not saying that won't change, but we've heard this story, this song and dance for years and years, and I just don't see why that would change, in the next 6 months.
Thank you. So Spencer, I was curious in your research, what have you guys seen, the companies that, did any talk about companies that are in China, what their reaction is going to be, what they're going to do now going forward in the more short term?
Yeah, I mean, I also want to be sensitive here. One of our portfolio companies is BTCC. In our conversations with them, they intend to follow all of the guidance from the PBOC, and they plan to wind down within the appropriate time frame. Their future remains a little bit uncertain. And Bobby's a smart guy, and we're hoping he's going to be able to pull it together.
And for everybody who may not know, BTC is a Chinese Bitcoin exchange.
Yeah, a top 3 Chinese Bitcoin exchange, and Bobby Lee is their CEO.
And they recently announced they're planning on shutting down, along with a couple of other exchanges.
Along with all of them, right? Are there any that have said they're not? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think every like almost every exchange is noticeable. It's been shut down. Like there's some couple very small ones. They thought like they were out of the radar. However, a couple days ago they also announced that, hey, please withdraw your coin. We are shutting down. So yeah, it's a very strong regulation, I would say.
There's also been a story going around that some of the executives of the exchanges are under house arrest. Is there any credence to that?
They're not under house arrest, they just can't fly. They're not under house arrest, they just can't leave like the city or the country. So, I mean, they can still go to the local mart and get some beer. Not quite the right thing.
Country arrest.
Yeah, country arrest.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Go for it. Again, total rumor mill stuff. I don't want to instill any kind of fear. You know, again, stuff that's been coming out of our network has been that a few people will be made examples out of with very, very severe punishments to discourage anybody else from following suit. You know, I hope that those things don't happen, but it's a possibility.
Are you serious in terms of fines or jail time or?
I am not going to go so far as to speculate how they will be punished, but very severely.
Can you draw a diagram? You can't say it, at least try.
So I think right now this area used to be kind of like gray area. So I don't think someone will like be fined to jail just because of this, because there's no rule before. So I think right now a very smart way is to like 100% follow the rule. And I think why China regulate this part is not because they want to, you know, like ban the whole blockchain industry. Like I talked to some of my friends, like if you look closely, there's another voice from like governments or big companies. They put a lot of effort or attention on blockchain itself. They try to build a lot of like cool and useful applications on top of blockchain. Even recently, there's still good news comes out. So, but just because the regulation, this part has been like ignored or hidden. So I think long-term wise, if you just follow the regulation, then there will be some way been open or created for like real product, and that will be still like it will be still some opportunity. So I would say not just like global wise. I think China is still one of the largest company like markets like people have to focus on, including us. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to clarify one thing as well. I agree with you that I think the gray market stuff, I think, you know, there's going to be maybe a little bit of leniency there. The people that I've heard about that are particularly at risk are the CEOs or executives of companies that took in customer deposits, particularly on exchanges, and then invested those in other investment products without their knowledge, which is already against existing regulation, is not a gray area at all. And so, you know, my understanding was those were the people that were at risk.
So yeah, just two bits of info on what Spencer said. Xinhuang posted a story about a month or so ago that said about $150 million, $125 million worth of customer deposits from OKCoin and Huobi had been used to basically use they took customer deposits and they went out to the financial markets and bought financial products with it without disclosing that to the customer base, basically acting as a type of bank or broker or something like that. It's funny, everyone's like, oh, who cares? And banks do that. These guys aren't being treated, they don't behave like banks, they don't have financial controls, they don't have transparency, etc. The other part I was going to add was the reason why these guys are, I don't want to say under house arrest or under country arrest, the reason that happened is because when word got out that ICO was going to be cracked down, you had, I won't say his name, but a VC in Shanghai booked a private plane to Macau, and now he's here in California. I won't say his name, but if anyone Hollywood producers here, if you're interested, lots of good stories about what happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Some of these guys fled the country. Fled the country, yeah. So the reason that they said you can't leave the country is because you have people like that jetting out and trying to get away with their ill-gotten gains. And it wasn't just like a little bit of money, it was millions of dollars that they took from people who were basically deceived.
Wow. And to follow up along the lines of the sort of long-term impact with China and what their long-term plans are, there's also been rumors around the idea that China's cracking down on Bitcoin because they plan on creating their own currency or backing a project like Neo more directly, a sort of an Ethereum equivalent project that's created and based out of China. I'm interested in your thoughts. Why don't we actually start with Tim again and just come right back down this way?
This is great. It's so much airtime. So there's something called the ERMB, or another way of describing it is a central bank digital currency. These projects have been going on for well over a year. I've actually met with, I won't say who and what, but my previous role at a company involved me talking to regulators, and that type of research is publicly known, related to how can we take our money supply in China or certain countries and basically digitize it such that you can allow access to that from different types of institutions besides the banks. So that process has been going on for well over 2 years. I'm happy to give you papers on that. And the PBOC has been specifically, the People's Bank of China has been talking about this. I don't think in any conversation I've ever had with anyone in that space believe that China these Chinese regulators are cracking down on Bitcoin in order to nationalize it, to own it. If you really want to know the utility that the PBOC is trying to do, you should just read their reports. It has nothing at all about co-opting Bitcoin. In fact, they're much more friendly. If they really wanted to kill quote-unquote Bitcoin, they could just be arresting every single one that they've ever seen on WeChat. I mean, they have GPS tracking abilities on these devices. So if you feel, this is why they're all using Telegram and stuff like that now. So if you really want to see
people fleeing the
people fleeing,
country.
that's exactly right. Yep. Tough one to follow.
Yeah, tough one to follow. So
maybe specifically Neo.
yeah, so I think Neil and maybe Qtum might do quite well, because if you look at, so I kind of look at, I'm very lazy, so I look for patterns, right? So if you look at how Amazon, Facebook, Google did not do well in China, Uber, Lyft, but Didi, Kuaidu, Tencent, and their equivalents have done well in China. Chinese companies and the Chinese government is very good at keeping money in China, meaning like if you're a Chinese consumer, there's a good chance you'll be spending your time and money looking at ads on platforms from Chinese companies. So similarly, right, if you look at, does the Chinese government really want Bitcoin and Ethereum to do really well when 100% of Bitcoin core is pretty much non-China developers? Or do they want a Qtum or Neo to succeed, right? I would not be surprised if they had regulations or maybe tilted the scales a little bit in favor of their homegrown cryptocurrencies. Why would they not do that? They've been very good at that. What they're not as good at, right, is having Alibaba become global. I mean, it's maybe starting to happen. We'll see. Amazon's very formidable and much more global than Alibaba. But if you look at kind of what China's good at and what they're not good at, and kind of guess that they'll probably maybe do the same thing with cryptocurrencies, then I think that's one way I would approach it.
Would you include Bitcoin Cash in that, being more of a China-based
yes,
project?
I don't want to talk about it, but yes, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, and probably SegWit 2x and any of the non-Bitcoin core implementations, right, that are out there. China, I could see entrepreneurs in China, whether it's miners or investors or developers, saying, hey, we don't want to do all this mining and hard labor and then have all the implementation and code base and maintainers controlled by people who are not, 0% of whom are from China, right? So maybe a Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold will do better. And if you're the type of Chinese government official or politician who is thinking the way I just talked about, you want more hard forks of Bitcoin because it weakens and confuses people. I am astounded. Did you guys know there's something called Bitcoin Dark? It's listed on coinmarketcap.com. So not only do you have Bitcoin, you have Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Dark, all listed on coinmarketcap.com, all trading. How is it possible that Bitcoin is letting, or whoever controls Bitcoin, or letting these other coins use the Bitcoin name, and it's going to happen again, and with SegWit 2x, they might try to take, who knows, but they might try to take the name Bitcoin or call it Bitcoin 2.0 because we're the better Bitcoin or the real Bitcoin or whatever. So, yeah, it's in their interest to, I look at what is in their interest, and this is not, it's not that the Chinese government or people in China necessarily wanted to hurt Bitcoin, but maybe they just, this is a side effect, and it's good for, in my opinion, Qtum and, you know.
Spencer?
Those are two phenomenal answers. I have nothing informative to add.
So yeah, some like small actual ideas. So I think right now, like the whole Bitcoin or blockchain world is overreacting to this regulation thingy. It's so for me, like it comes to regulations, like especially in China, you have to be like executable. And so basically, before you rule out some regulation, you should cut a line, like where is the right, which part is good, which part is not. Banning Bitcoin itself, I don't think it's first is executable. Second, it will affect tons of other industry, like for example mining, right? Mining industry in China actually is very like just like traditional company. So you really have no reason like to shut it down just because you are mining Bitcoin instead of something else. So I think right now just because two very bad news coming out, so people start to believing like China gonna do whatever they want and ban this ban that. I think this is really like overreacting. So long term wise, I think there will be no like worse news comes out personally. And also I just came back from China like for about 1 week. So given what I observed there,
They let you leave.
yeah, that's one of the good things. Luckily, I did a refund before I go to China. I went to China, yeah. So yeah, well, I do have some friends like saying, I really decided to go because before when I went back to China, I was supposed to have 3 conferences and supposed to do some 3 presentations, and all those conferences are canceled. And we are not supposed to do any presentation or marketing or talking about our project at all. But I still decided to go back to China. Why? Because I want to see what's going on in China. Like all of you guys, what you can get, it's those public channels and read some news and some summary from someone who may know or may not know what's really going on. So I want to go back to China to see what's going on. And from what I see, I think there is some reason why those regulations comes out, because there really some bad thing happens. Like you may know, in some small cities, there's this chain, that chain, a lot of small project comes out, and the only purpose is to raise the money, and they're doing nothing. And even me as people who take very close look at this area, I don't know those projects. And they try to build out some WeChat channel, try to raise money in the small groups. So there are some bad projects and try to screw up this area.
But you don't see this affecting mining?
Well, I don't think so. Yeah. So, and I think recently why the exchanges are shutting down, just because it comes together, right? Like ICO is one thing that Chinese market, the China want to ban it. So exchanges are actually one of the driven all of the power behind this wave. So I think they want to shut down all ICO related exchanges. And so when it comes to this area or this topic, then well, even those Bitcoin exchanges, you are not doing ICO coins, but you are still related.
So we've been mentioning mining a couple of times. We've heard Terrence's opinion as well. Spencer, do you think that mining is going to be affected in China? And then we'll go to Tim.
Again, so I kind of go back to Terrence's kind of thoughts on this as well. Why ban something where you're a world leader? And then the flip side, kind of, the word on the street of what we're gathering is, otherwise. So, I'm kind of struggling with how to put those two things together. Why ban?
You've been hearing that they are planning on banning?
Yeah, exactly. Either, explicitly or just via if you ban all over-the-counter and peer-to-peer trading of Bitcoin, which first of all is actually very hard to effectively do, to literally make sure everyone doesn't do it, except with fear. So, you know, if you do a couple strong enforcements against people that do try and do it, then people are going to stop doing it for the most part, or at least 95, 98% of it will stop. Maybe 5 or 3% of people that like really, you know, are willing to take that kind of risk are going to go for it, and other ones aren't. And if you're a miner and you can't sell your Bitcoins, you know, you're effectively shut down anyways, even if they didn't say you're shut down. So, you know, that's one of the challenges. And then, you know, the more aggressive outcome that we've been hearing about is just, you know, outright, you know, take over the facilities or requirement to just shut down, of just unplug everything.
Tim?
Yes, and none of my friends in China that do mining said that they would shut down. They hear all those rumors too. So I'm not going to say what will necessarily happen. I simply don't know. But I'll say that there's two interesting dynamics in China that really haven't been really explored too much. Spencer, you just mentioned one of it was when miners get Bitcoin, they need to exchange it for RMB, not because they love RMB, but because the utilities require being paid for RMB. So even if they got bank accounts or were able to trade on an exchange in Japan, Korea, or Hong Kong, they don't have access to RMB, or at least RMB in the amounts that they need to pay the electrical bills. So that's one thing. Now, the second other part is over the last 10 years, there's been preferential treatment to, there's roughly 3 or 4 dozen minorities, ethnic minorities that are recognized by the Chinese government, and there's several in the Northwest, and they've received specific benefits related to subsidies of electrical costs. And a number of these have actually set up shop, creating mining farms. And so the theory is that these guys really can't politically be shut down, not because they're amazingly, impervious to being shut down. It's just because it would look bad to the approach that the PRC's done the last 10, 20 years to have an outreach to the ethnic minorities. So one theory was, how we have casinos on specific Native American lands. So somebody was saying, well, hey, if this actually happened, then everyone's just going to ship it off to these lands controlled by these people. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Bitcoin reservations?
Bitcoin reservations. So you heard it here first, but I deny have anything to do with it.
So let's go ahead and open up to Q&A. I'll just go ahead and pick someone and I'll repeat the question. Right here.
So I have a question for Tim. Okay. Tim said Bitcoin is about speculation. I have a simple question. When Goldman Sachs does an IPO, what drives the value of an IPO? Isn't that speculation drives the value of any conceptual asset?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. But there's cash flows, there's workforce, there's actual IP, there are products. So
But those are just stories. End of the day, any conceptual asset value is driven by speculation.
So his question is Tim, if you said Bitcoin is driven by speculation, if Goldman listed a company during IPO, isn't that driven by speculation? I absolutely agree. But again, those companies that are being listed actually have cash flows, they have employees, they have the ability to bring products to market. Bitcoin is a public common good. It doesn't create more than one product. There are no other business lines. It doesn't have 30 different products that the network itself can handle. And if you add things like color coins, that actually makes the network a little bit more less secure because you're adding more value that the miners are actually probably destroying capital for. We can argue about this all day long, but I wouldn't disagree with the original statement you said, but I would certainly say that the reason why speculators come in is because they believe that other speculators are going to come in, and this continues to drive the price without actually bringing in new utilities to the platform.
So I see this fundamental issue with the ICO market on both sides. On the sell side, there's this incentive to release this shit ICO from shit code on a white paper with the hopes of raising millions and jetting to Monaco. On the buy side, there's this incentive to buy a shit ton of coins and sit on them until the price is raised, until you can sell them and jet out to Monaco. For those developers and entrepreneurs who actually want to create something real, who want to create a product or an economy that provides value for the market and for humanity, speaking just to those of us for a moment, what actionable steps can we take to ensure that our tokens are used as they are intended?
Who wants to take that one? And if you could summarize the question too for the camera. All right?
I'll take a first stab at it. Can I go after? Yeah. Okay. I think there's a few basic things that come to mind right off the top of my head. Both on the...
Just real quick for the live stream people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the question was basically, there's obviously a lot of kind of nonsense going on with a lot of these ICOs, both on the buy side and the sell side. How can I do something where I'm actually trying to build a real product, a real application, something that's actually going to be great for the world? And how do I make sure I structure that both, I think, with the team and with investors? Is that kind of... Yeah. So, I think that, with both of those, lockups can help with investors as far as, disencouraging people that or discouraging people that would otherwise just be in to flip for 2 months. Particularly, I mean, not to talk our book too much, but with blockchain capital, I mean, we've been a venture firm that's been dedicated to the space since 2012, 2013. So we're here to help businesses build like long-term, actual sustainable businesses and not flip out of positions in 3 months. In general, I think looking at the backgrounds of a lot of the investors is a good way to get started. A lot of the hedge funds that have just popped up are probably not quite in that same boat. If you need to put lockups on your investors to help filter them, that might be one way to do it. Also doing vesting periods for the team, I think, is one way that helps as well, to also get investors comfortable with the fact that you're there long term. I mean, you want your backers there long term supporting your project to be strategic resources for you. And similarly, your strategic investors want to find a team that is actually going to be, stay invested in the project. I mean, it's really easy to say that you really want to build this great application, and then all of a sudden when you have $20 million in the bank and you encounter your first really hard problems, which is inevitable in any startup, what's really stopping you from just saying, this is a lot harder than I expected. The beach looks really nice right now in jet off to Monaco.
All right, so the answer is talk to blockchain capital.
Or other reputable investors, and if you get good lawyers on your team, right, good ICO advisors, some of them have been very successful. We have one here that did soft lending and others. I think if you are able to get credible people, to the extent there are, some people with successes with ICOs that look more real than others, that's a start. And then also if you can articulate, right, if you can write a white paper that people actually understand, even if it's technical. So Richard Feynman from Caltech said, if I can't explain something at a college freshman level, I don't understand it. So a lot of people complain and they think it's a gimmick because you have a lot of very smart people trying to read these white papers, but because the founder seems so much smarter, they don't bother understand, and then it just becomes this bubble of junk.
Yeah. Sorry, another question? I think we had somebody back here that was nodding at before. No, I guess not. Okay. Yes. Right there.
With regards to the retail investors in China and taxes, I'm not familiar with how the tax system works in China, but can you kind of speak to using the U.S. IRS guidance as an analogy of now with this ban, what do retail investors, what are they expected to do? And that's sort of one part. And the second part is, just even before the ban, was there any guidance by the IRS equivalent on capital gains?
So the question was regards to taxes in China and retail investors.
So in China, China government only tax on those registered company. So if you are unregistered or you are running on your own, you are free to not paying tax. That's a cultural-wide thing. Like, for example, when you go to any restaurant in China, you basically, how much it is, you just pay for that. You are not supposed to pay any extra tax. And then saying, if you earn some money from exchange or invest in any ICO thing, actually legal-wise, you are not supposed to pay tax at all. So there's no tax from the capital gain unless your fund is under-registered, and so because you are protected by government, and then so you have to pay tax. So it's not just like here, you are supposed to voluntarily pay tax when you have any capital gain. So it's totally different culture then, or legal system.
It's really interesting. Yes, right there.
Sorry, before the question I want to ask, so I want to say something. So you may feel why this is so ridiculous, why China is doing in this way. But from the other side, if you can see, that's why China have making so much progress in the past, because they create kind of free markets. If you can gain something, why not? Try your best. So actually, these free markets is very helpful to the whole Chinese China's whole markets itself. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
So you know how the ICO market has been. There's obviously been a huge influx in terms of popularity, and obviously one of the major concerns about raising money from China is also potentially money laundering and other types of just control issues. what do you guys foresee in regards to this anti-money laundering, know your customer bank secrecy, all this type of information? Like,
Yeah, I got this one, man. Okay, for those on the live stream here, the question is if you're doing an ICO, how do you handle money laundering? And how do you prevent that from happening? And how do you not end up on somebody's list? Okay, so everyone's always talking about the SEC and securities and maybe something like what the Chinese government may do. Everyone's forgetting the AML laws in all these different countries. Again, AML is anti-money laundering laws. In the U.S. alone, you have the OCC, you have FinCEN, you have different states just looking at ways to potentially clamp down on it. So even if you think that you've gone through the legit process of KYCing individuals from certain countries, if you've not gone through an OFAC list, raise your hand. Who knows what OFAC is? Okay. Afterwards, if you're doing an ICO, go talk to the people raising their hands because they're probably not going to let you go to jail, or maybe they will let you go to jail in this lab. OFAC is an acronym for an agency based in DC, which maintains a list of people, organizations, and basically countries that are banned from having money move through intermediaries to them. And if you send money to them, then you can go to jail. And so, like Russia as a country is one of those entities because of the Ukraine incidents and stuff like that. So we could go on and on. There's thousands of names on that list. So if you're doing an ICO and you haven't done something like do an AML check, there's companies like Identity Mind, I believe, just posted that they're doing it. Not to shill or anything like that, but I'm just saying there's companies that actually do this. There's law firms that can help you do this. I totally recommend. Don't be raise your hand. Who's an anarchist? Anyone an anarchist? Okay, don't talk to those people. Actually, you should, even if you're an anarchist, you should go talk to some lawyers because even if you don't like governments, they're going to do their jobs, which means go after people who don't comply with their laws. So just be realistic about it, guys, and to save some time and pay a little money to some lawyers.
I'm a little disappointed with the number of hands that went up.
For those on live streaming, it was only like 4 people.
It's supposed to be a Bitcoin event. All right, one of the anarchists.
I think like tonight's panel, like we touched on Chinese, all the areas with mining and exchanges and the neo. And I think one thing like could be possible. I think that the key to understanding all of this, like why this is all happening, is the investigation to corrupt officials in China using Bitcoin to escape the sort of get their ill-gotten gains out of the country. That's why the executives denied relief because. And the mining, I think, not complete ban, but there was, rumors where I think the Chinese government will come in through those Bitcoin mining companies and ask them for every single customer that's purchased a machine from them, and you do not comply, your operation will be shut down. And this, one of the reasons, not just cheap power in China, but the growth of the entire mining industry in China grew because a lot of money was actually money laundered through the mining operations overseas.
So your question around corruption, who would like to take that?
Okay. I won't say a story about China directly with corrupt officials. That's something centuries old in all these different countries, so it's something to do. But there was one interesting anecdote. I was in Hong Kong last June, and there was an exchange out there that was basically saying, "Hey, we've sold tens of thousands of these debit cards." Like, raise your hand. Who's ever bought a debit card before? Okay, besides the anarchists. So nobody buys debit cards because you get them for free from your bank because that's what they do in these overbank customer in these developed countries. So why are people buying thousands and thousands of these debit cards? I asked around, I found because it's easier to launder money and bribe officials across the Greater China region rather than carrying bags of RMB or hanging out with the red envelopes and stuff like that. I'm not saying that that's what happened. To your point, I don't know what was the line that was specifically crossed, but it was definitely something that took place. I'm very well aware of the individuals and happy to chat with you offline about. Well, actually, maybe I won't tell you. Actually, I'm just going to talk to you.
Talk to Tim after the live stream. He will name names. So we only have time for 2 more questions because we have to move on. So let's go ahead and you've had your hand up for a while there, Gray Shirt.
So I feel like it's easy right now to say these governments don't want to actually ban Bitcoin. They just want to establish rules around it to make sure no one can cheat it. But I think that's kind of a function of Spencer's point that we are still in the beginning. And what I think this action by China is going to be shown is the extent to which the exchanges are very much a central point of failure for the ramp from fiat into the cryptocurrency system. And I'm wondering in particular what your thoughts are on whether seizing these exchanges gives governments a list of everyone who's bought crypto and exists crypto, and whether they may at some point decide to go after actual individual holders. And I'd be particularly interested in Tim's thoughts on what the possible legal or constitutional barriers against the U.S. government trying to take people's cryptographic asset property in that way would be, when you bought something with fiat and then go around whether it's yours or not.
Seems very popular.
So for the live stream, the question was basically, do mining equipment manufacturers keep a list of names? If those lists of names end up in the hands of government officials, either in China or broadly speaking in other countries, what would happen if someone was prosecuted? So what would be that kind of catchphrase when mining is outlawed, only the outlaws are mine or something? I don't have any, I've never heard of anyone necessarily being gone after because of they were on some list. I'm sure there are lists. I mean, you want to know your customers so you can sell them more stuff. But to my knowledge, in China and even in the U.S., the only people that really are gone after are people who are not paying electrical bills, or like for example, Butterfly Labs. Anyone remember Butterfly Labs? Kansas, the FTC went after them. What did the FTC go after them for? Because they built these equipment and then mined on it first before shipping it to the customers, right? There's all sorts of sad stories. That's the only kind of stories I'm familiar with where they actually called up customers. I believe the FTC actually went through to find out who these guys were before pressing charges. And I think that case actually got reversed or something like that. I'm not sure what the latest on that one is.
You want to add it to the first part of the question?
The first part of the question being
I think it was about being the early days and
all right, yeah.
One of the
So,
questions around like a broader crackdown on crypto, holders, people who bought it on exchanges, not necessarily involved in money.
It's like a broader crackdown. People who just bought.
It's definitely possible. So that's not quite a ban, right? It's more the government going in and saying, we know you have this information, turn it over. I could totally see China or pretty much any government that wants to go after their own people for money laundering or whatever nefarious activity as they define it, as an anarchist might say, then they're going to do it because they have guns, they have the power to do that. So that's why having a lot of actors in highly regulated countries is a risk to the cryptocurrencies. It's not as decentralized, arguably, as people think at the subsystem level.
All right, let's hear our last question. Yes, right in front.
Somewhat related. I was going to ask.
It's related, we can.
Well, this one. So, have the Chinese enforcement actions highlighted any weaknesses in kind of the Bitcoin network? More so than we realized before. We were talking a lot about the miners and exchanges, but in terms of like any type of decentralization that it maybe isn't as good as we thought it was, that it's now more apparent.
Yeah, so weaknesses in the system that are being highlighted by the way China's going after this. Do you have any thoughts there, Spencer? Do you have a look on your face?
I don't know that I do, but it's a good question. I don't think it exposed anything that we didn't already know, right? We already knew that centralized exchanges were a risk. We already knew that centralized mining was a risk. Centralization is efficient, so it gravitates towards centralization. If anything, this is probably a healthy reminder of kind of the value of decentralization. But I don't know that it exposed anything that we didn't know already. Do you guys? Yeah.
Well, that seems like a very positive place to end on today. Our panelists are going to be hanging on a little bit. If you have any questions, you didn't get a chance to ask them. Please, big round of applause. Thank you so much for coming out. And I hope to see you. We do an event like this the last Tuesday of every month. We also meet at El Rio on the second Thursday of every month, and that's a really great place just to hang out and talk, and you'll actually have some one-on-one time more. So I hope to see you all at those events. Thanks for all coming out.
Thanks so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's great for discussion. Yeah, always.
There's a good part that we'll speak about.
Hey, thanks for the panel. Very positive. Indeed. It's a pleasure to see you in person. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. It was a good panel. Thanks. Eric. I've seen you talk. Oh, yeah. Hard form. I was in the hard for big time. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun. Park off. I got that. I saw it.
Fork off?
Yeah. You can park off.
Meetup always happening here? Usually it's here, yeah. This meetup happens here. There's another developer that also happens here. Travis.
Oh, hey.
Great to see you, man. I just got back this morning. I don't know. I got a little growth. Thank you so much for your story for me. Yeah, sure.